It's y'all's fault. It's immediate. Nothing really bad's happened, nothing like that. It's just September's always a little bit rough on me. Just a seasonal thing, I guess. So the music really hit the words. Darkness has to flee. It doesn't have a place in my life. I'd rather be here in your love. So thank you. We'll get more into it. It's a little bit in the sermon, so I'm not going to speak too much on everything. All right. I want to start off with Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1 through 2. All right. Therefore, be imitators of God as dearly loved children, and walk in love, as the Messiah also loved us and gave himself for us, a sacrificial and fragrant offering to God. I've read this verse like 1,000,000 times. I don't know how in the world I literally missed as dearly loved children. I don't know how it just never did. I was like, be imitators of Christ. I tell my youth that pretty much almost every Wednesday. They get tired of hearing it. Be imitators of God. Be imitators of Christ. But then as dearly loved children. And I'm not a parent or anything. I am an uncle. And I've got about 1,000,000 kids in my youth group that I do view as my kids. And there is truly no other greater love than I believe being a parent. Like I see it in my father and my mother. And so as children, as dearly loved children, how much he loves us. It's just a crazy amount. But when I was reading that, I was thinking we had a little family get together last week. My aunt came to town, Aunt Donna. And we were all sitting around in the kitchen dining room table and just really enjoying our time. I was sitting next to her and she did something. She turned around to get something and I laughed. And she turned around immediately and looked at me and she said, "Oh, I thought Bobby was there." It cracked me up because she was talking about how much I sound like my dad. I do. I kind of realized it. I've heard myself in recordings and stuff, and I was like, I do. I sound like my father, and in ways act like my father. Good and bad, probably. He's an amazing guy. I'm not going to pick too much. But the more that I've been out there, and if most of y'all know me, y'all have probably seen me in C-Spires around here. I worked in that field for like 6-7 years, and just recently, in the past year, kind of got out of that and started doing something different. But I worked in this community for a long time, and very much enjoyed it. But it never failed. Happened at least once a year. Somebody would come in and they would start talking to me, and then after a little while, they'd be like, "Are you Bobby's son?" No reference, nothing. Haven't told them anything about my family, nothing. But they're like, "Are you Bobby's son?" And they're like, "You sound just like him, and you talk like him, and you act like him." And I was like, "Oh, yep, that is my father." And again, like I said, it's a good thing. I'm not ashamed of that at all, Dad. But the more I read this verse, it's like as dearly loved children, and how much we're supposed to look like our parents. As much as some of the kids in this room probably hate that idea, becoming like your parent is very much likely going to happen. It's just how you were raised. It's part of your whole being because you're influenced by this person for so long. And so hopefully you have a good parent. But like that there, it's an amazing thing because he's saying you are his child. So if you're his child, like you should be being influenced as his child. That means you should be spending a large amount of time with him, and he should be influencing your actions and the things that you do. You should be an imitator of Christ as dearly loved children. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. And imitators, when I was looking it up, if y'all have this app, it's amazing. It's called Got Questions. Like, I love it. I look up verses all the time whenever I'm kind of trying to figure something out. And a lot of times it'll show you little Greek and Hebrew and just all types of different things, but it's a great app. But I was looking it up and it said that it basically meant what it was. It meant an imitator or a follower. And so a follower has a little bit of a different connotation to it. A follower is being led by somebody, obviously, which to me, there's kind of like a teacher-student mentality. And something that I've taught the youth multiple times is like, you're always a student. You're always absorbing things. You're always learning new stuff. And it's very important to make sure that you're absorbing the right things, because we can easily pull in the bad things as well. So who you're around and things of that sort really matter. But I do know, as I've aged, I'm not very old, but I've always been very, very careful, and I've said this multiple times, but been very careful of being like a leader, because I've seen in scripture where it says that a young man can become prideful if he leads too much and things of that sort, and he starts. So I've always worried about that. I've been like, I don't want to do that. Don't ever want to be that way. I want to be humble. I want to be able to represent Christ in the correct way. I want to be able to take correction. And so in that, as you do get older, it is so much harder to change, right? You get set in your ways, don't really like things to push you or challenge you. I'm not going to lie, a lot of times I think I know it all, and then 5 years down the road, I'm like, oh, definitely was wrong. It's something that I have to make sure myself that I do, because in the Wambolt blood, hard-headedness is strong. So I have to be careful of that. I do. So John chapter 3, verse 3, we see Jesus talking to Nicodemus. And he said, you must be born again. You gotta be born again. And we all know the story. Like, he's real confused about it. He doesn't understand how you can be born a second time if you've already been born. And we know what he's talking about here. You have to be born again. You have to change. So if you've got something going on in your life that you know needs changing, Jesus is telling you right here, you better get to work. Because when you took me, you were born again. So everything's starting over. You're that child again. You are no longer who you thought you were. You are a child of God. And children, pulling in everything around them, that's how we're supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be hard-headed. I'm supposed to listen. I'm supposed to be obedient. I'm supposed to obey. Like, those things go hand in hand with taking the title of Christian, being an imitator of Christ. Like, you have to. So you're starting over. As soon as you did that, you're a child again. And he doesn't really reference you as an adult too much. He's always calling you his child. So the moment you accepted Christ, you became a kid again. And that means that you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to change old beliefs. You have to be willing to change things that are just ingrained in us constantly in our society today. Old beliefs that aren't particularly true, new beliefs that are crazy, just all types of stuff that's going on. But here it is, just over and over, Jesus saying, you're a child, you are mine. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Again, change. It says you have to have the renewing of your mind. I encourage everybody in this room to really evaluate yourself over and over again. It is so important that we don't get stuck in the same spot, that we're unwilling to admit that we might be wrong in something that we believed our whole life. It's hard to do that. It is really, really hard to do that. I remember when I first got saved, young 16-year-old Joel, and everything that I believed, some of it still pretty true, and a lot of it just dead wrong. And that's 12 years from that point to now. It's been constant change, and every year I'm still changing, learning new things, trying to become more like Christ. And the more I become like him, the more a lot of me has to realize it doesn't have a place there. Because to be an imitator of Christ, to be an imitator of God, am I God? No. So I've read a lot of things in the Bible that really confused me at times. One of them being Noah's Ark. I was like, how in the world are you going to kill everybody? Like, that is just crazy to me. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of times I look at it and I'm like, gosh, that just seems astronomical. Like, why in the world would you do that? I would never. And then there it is. I would never. Oh, I'm God now. Oh, God, you did that. That was wrong. I'm throwing my beliefs on him because I feel like morally I'm correct when he created everything. So I'm throwing my beliefs on him like I'm right. And so, yeah, maybe I don't understand why you did it. Doesn't mean that it was wrong. I just don't understand it yet. Until I get to that point, there has to be change. There has to be. Because my morals, my character, everything that makes Joel, it's not God. Now, as I grow in Christ, I'm becoming more like him. A lot of the old characteristics are going away. I have more understanding. And that's where we have to get. You don't ever want to place your ideologies on what God is. Because, again, a lot of times we're wrong. We're not God. His ways are higher than mine. His understanding is greater than mine. So maybe, if I feel like something was wrong, maybe I'm just wrong. And understanding that has gotten me through a lot. If I don't understand something, I pray about it. I'm like, God, just keep leading me until I do. Like, it's a very, very important thing. So, if we're imitating God now, all right, if we're imitating him, we're imitating Jesus, what are we actually imitating? We want to know all of God's characteristics, because if we know his characteristics and we start imitating those things, we're going to become a lot like him. Because how many of y'all have ever hung out with a bad crew? Me. I've done that. And so I've hung out with people that influenced me a lot, and guess what? I became a lot more like them than I should have. People that you don't want to be with, if you hang out with them, you're going to become like them. It's just how it is. So if you're imitating God and you're around him all the time, you're just going to become like him. Like, that's a very, very important thing. The more time you spend with him, the more time you're going to be like him. And so in my relationship, I kind of named off a couple things that stood out to me. God is very loving, like just a crazy amount. Jesus came down and gave his life for all of us. And I could say it so, like, obviously, like, yeah, we've read the book, but that's a huge thing. And the more you hear it, the more you kind of become desensitized to it. You don't really understand how, like, amazing that truly is. I remember when I first heard it, I was like, oh gosh, that's just blew my mind that he would just come down and do it for me. Joel Wambolt. I ain't worth that much in my eyes. But the creator of the universe thought I was, and he loved me so much that he came and died for me. That's just amazing. So he is so loving. But the thing is, gosh, have you ever spoke to somebody that just really got under your skin? Oh, my sister does that to me a lot. She's not here, so I can talk about it. She knows how to push my buttons, and I'm not going to lie, as I grew up, there were moments where I hated her guts so hard. Now, I love my sister. I love her to death. But in those moments of really, really being irritated with her, I had to remind myself, God loves her just as much as, But that's family. That's easy to do. What about that person at your job that you just can't stand? I've had many of those. People that just drove me crazy. I had a couple people that put me in this group chat once. They wanted me to be one of the boys. Wanted me to hang out with them, do what they do. And all they did constantly, they would, okay, this is going to be weird. Anytime they got lucky, they would send like a certain emoji in the chat. Drove me crazy. And I was like, I left that chat so many times, and they'd add me back in. And finally I went off on them at work because they wanted me to go hang out with them. They wanted me to go party with them. They wanted me to just do all this stuff with them. And I'd had enough. I was so irritated with them, and I was like, I'm not doing that stuff. Like, it's not who I am. It doesn't even sound enjoyable to me because I don't live that way. So, they got under my skin. Made me real angry. And I didn't like them. But God does. And as much as I disliked, I had to remind myself that I'm here for them. I'm here to be an example. And they already knew it, and they stopped finally. They left me at the chat. But, like, they finally got it. And they're like, okay, he's not going to do that because he's a good Christian guy. He's not going to. And so I left an example there. And I did. I continued to love them. Like I said, they got under my skin, but I continue to love them because that's what God says to do. He also says God is very forgiving. Very forgiving God. Like, again, I've spent a large portion of my life screwing up. Even after becoming a Christian. Made a lot of mistakes. A whole lot of mistakes. God forgave every single one of them. I have no issue at all forgiving somebody for something that they did to me. It's never really been an issue. But if you do something to somebody that's closer to me, it's a lot harder for me to, give that forgiveness because they're important to me. Most of the time I'm putting them above myself. I value them, and you hurt them. And it's very hard for me to let that stuff go. I had that happened one time, and it was a very serious situation, but I held a grudge against this one particular guy for years. And I would play it off like, oh yeah, I know I'll forgive him. Yeah, because, God told me to. I want to forgive him, but I didn't. I hated his guts. Didn't want anything to do. God really convicted me one night, and he just told me, it's like, I love him just as much as I love you. He may have made a mistake. He may have done something that was wrong, but I still love him, and I crave a relationship with him. I crave that relationship just as much as I crave it with you. And so he forgave him immediately, and God's had to kind of beat that into me. It was a tough thing to do, but to let that go. He's a very forgiving God. He forgave everyone. He's very caring. I can say that I've had a very good family, very good upbringing, but a lot of times I felt like nobody cared about me. I think we've all gone through that. We just go through these episodes where it's just you, and it feels like everybody in the room, but it's just you. With God, ever since I really entered a relationship with him, that's never happened. He's always been there. He's always cared. He's always comforted me in any situation. He's always loved me and just cared. So I've never been alone. He's very protective. If you want him to, he'll keep you out of situations, but you got to be willing to allow him to. That's the thing most of us don't want to do. You don't want to give up old lifestyles and stuff like that. He'll get you there, but you got to be willing to let him. But he is very protective. If you look in the Old Testament, all these times the Israelites just leave God, and he kind of lets them go on their own. But as soon as they come back, he's like, I got you. I got you. You start allowing me to protect you, and guess what? It doesn't matter how many people are in that army over there, I'm going to take them out myself. Like, he is very protective, and he'll do that for us. But, again, only if we allow him to. I think that is a very, very key indicator of where we're standing with Christ is when we're like, I don't know why God will allow this in my life. And I'm like, well, are you letting him actually fix the problem? You got to let him do that. And lastly here for me, he's very patient. Like I said previously, I've made a lot of mistakes. Done a lot of things. It took me a lot of time to be like, okay, gotta let this go. Hold on to a grudge for years and years. And God's just waiting for that moment. He's like, if you'll let me, I'll deal with the grudge. I'll deal with the hate. I'll deal with the anger. And he's patient. He waited. And as soon as I was like willing, he was like, here we go. And didn't hold nothing against me. He wasn't like, oh, it took you long enough. Like, he loved me. He cared about me. And he just wanted to protect me. And he was patient the whole time. It's an amazing thing. And like, I don't know what your top 5 things are, how you view God. But that's really, for me, is like the biggest things in my life that I've seen. And these are things that I've learned to be a lot like. I can tell you, everywhere I've worked, people have said I'm very kind. I'm known at my office right now to be the guy that prays for people. I pray for probably one person every day at least. Like, I talk to a ton of people. That's pretty much what I do. I make phone calls all day now. And so I talk to a bunch of people. And if they're going through something, I'm immediately going to be like, hey, you want me to pray for you? And it wasn't too long ago, there was a fellow from around here. I talked to him, and he said, I can't even remember now, but he was going through something. I prayed over it, and we had a voicemail on our machine that said, I can't remember this guy's name, but he prayed for me, and I want him to call me back. And so all my coworkers were laughing, and they thought it was funny, but it was like, it's just something I do because I genuinely care, and I love the people around me, and I want to like show them that. It's not something that I had before. I couldn't genuinely love people when I first got saved. It just wasn't there because I didn't know Christ like I know him now. Like, it was very hard for me to love anybody. It was very hard for me to allow myself to get close to anybody. Like, I didn't want to. But now, guess what? It's my character. Because I've allowed those things into my life. I've allowed God to change me. And it's been a beautiful relationship. I've had stumbles. I've had moments where I messed up. But overall, this is who he's made me to be. So, those are great. Those are great, great things. But I've seen this right here, and it drives me crazy. Romans chapter 1, verse 18. For God's wrath is revealed from heaven against all godlessness and unrighteousness of people who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. All right. We're not called here to dish out God's wrath. God's blatantly saying right here, I got this. It's coming from heaven. Like, if I've got to deal with something, I'll deal with it. Your job here is to be imitators of me and to go out and show my characteristics as a child of God. I came down here, I forgave you. Came down here, I loved you. I cared for you. I'm protecting you. I'm patient with you. I do all these things. And then, personally, I see Christians go out and bash non-believers, bash other Christians, unfortunately, and be very, very, well, God said you ain't supposed to do this, you shouldn't be doing it type thing, but they do it in a way that is so out of any form of love. It's just dead wrong. You were not called here to dish out God's justice. And the older I get, sadly, the more I see this. I'm not going to name the name, but there's a particular church that I know of, and y'all probably know of it already, but they go out and they picket like rallies. They have signs that are super offensive to certain groups of people. And it's horrible. They go out there and they're like, you're going to burn in hell. Burn in hell. And that's wrong. Where does it say in the Bible to go out and do that? I don't see Jesus doing that once, where he's going out and he is just provoking people to this anger. Like, I know in their minds they think they're doing something, but really it's just pushing people away. I don't think anybody in here does that, but it's something that it really irks me. I hate it. But again, it's that moment where I got to be careful because God called me to love them just as much. But it's very, very irritating to see because I have a relationship with Christ that I'll say most of these quote-unquote Christians don't have. And so they're kind of trying to join a club type situation when they become a Christian. And they go to church and they're a good person and they do all this stuff. That's really all they do. And a lot of people don't develop that relationship past that. I know what God is. I know how much he loves me. I know how much he loves everybody in this room. And that's changed me. And God wants me to go out there and show that same love to everybody else. And it hurts me to see because this is what happens when we do it. Non-Christians see it. And they're like, oh, I don't want to be anything like that. They are the most hateful people. Like, Christians are the most hateful people. And it pushes them away. And that's the interaction that they've had with a Christian. Somebody out there just bashing people over and over. And so now they don't want anything to do with it at all. Don't want anything to do with this God that these people serve, that loves them so unconditionally, but because we're a bad representation, a bad imitator of Christ, it's pushed them away forever. They don't want to have that relationship. That's a scary thought for me. I don't ever want to do that. Lately, this is a weird one. Last time I had to talk about, who was it? It was the books that were being banned and everything. Dr. Seuss, that's what it was. Dr. Seuss. I never thought I'd have to talk about Dr. Seuss. Now it's Little Mermaid. Oh my gosh. Y'all seen it? What's going on with that? It's like a crazy thing. They've cast a black Little Mermaid, and which I have 100% no issue with, but apparently a lot of people do. Like, it is the craziest thing. There is a Facebook group out there called Christians Against the Little Mermaid. Because she's black. So imagine, it's gone viral, so millions of people have seen this. Millions of people have seen this. Now, I'll wager that there's nobody in this room that believes that, but guess what? Outside right now, there's people that when they see you and they hear that you're a Christian, that's what they think of. Because somebody in their bad imitation of Christ decided they're going to do this, and now millions of people think it. It's crazy. I also think of this, that woman that has been cast out, I don't know her name, sorry. But she probably loves The Little Mermaid, and so much so that she's like, I want to do this, I want to act in this. And now people are out there like, no, you can't do that. She's wanted to do this since she was a little girl, and she got it, and it feels amazing. And now it's like one of the biggest disliked videos on YouTube right now. It's got 1.5 million dislikes. And her whole feelings for this are probably ruined now. Something that she's wanted to do for forever. But because people are so hateful, you can't get past stuff. That's frustrating to me. And again, that goes back to that whole Christian that did that. Why? That's not what Jesus thinks. That's not what he wants. He wants me to go out and love these people. And so we have to be careful. That's all I'm really saying there. And then lastly here, all right, not trying to step on nobody's toes and not anything. If y'all want to talk to me afterwards, whatever. Politics. It irks me so much. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. I really don't. If you have those beliefs, whatever, it's all up to you. But, all right, you have no right to bash anyone else's beliefs on that. You have no right to go out and be super hateful to that person because they have a different political view. It drives me insane. You can go out and just tell somebody they are worthless and that they have no value because of their beliefs. And I've seen this. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm one of those people that when I go on Facebook, I'm scrolling. I'm looking at the comments, checking it out. And you want to know how many people I've clicked on their profiles and they have a verse. It's the first thing I see. And then I go see you calling them a communist and all this crazy stuff. It is the most hateful thing. And that's not okay. It is so not okay. God called us to love everyone. Now, is there time for correction and things of that sort? Yes. I'm not saying that everybody's right and shouldn't be. We should just let everybody do whatever they want. There is time for correction. But doing it in the right way, the right context, all that, has to be done. You're not supposed to be driving people away. Because with social media nowadays, everybody sees it. Everybody sees your verse on your page. And then everybody sees the nasty comments that you're throwing out at people. You have to be very careful. And if we're not, there it goes viral, whatever. Now everybody views Christians like that. when I know that's not what it is. I know that's not a real representation of who Christ is. So I'm very careful about that stuff. It's not our job to deal out God's wrath. It's not. Like, if he feels like something needs to be done, he'll handle it. He called you to be an imitator of him and to go out and to love people. Go forth and make disciples of all nations. That's one of my favorite verses. How in the world are you going to make a disciple if you're pushing everybody away from you? You got to be careful about that stuff. And so if we know that it's a problem, if we know that anytime I hear something about politics and it just makes your blood pressure go up, it's something you need to work on. It's just the truth. Like, you need to work on that. And it can be any other things. Maybe something that I haven't listed in here. It's something that we have to work on. Because God called us to, again, go forth and make disciples of all nations. You need to be being that person that draws people in, not push them away. We got to be careful. That's really all I'm saying there. And I wanted to give you all a little bit of a heads up in case you didn't know. Romans chapter 1, verse 28 through 32. And because they did not think it worthwhile to acknowledge God, God delivered them over to a worthless mind to do what is morally wrong. They are filled with all unrighteousness, evil, greed, and wickedness. They are full of envy, murder, quarrels, deceit, and wickedness. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, arrogant, proud, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, and unmerciful. Although they know full well God's just sentence that those who practice such things just deserve to die. They not only do them, but even applaud the others who practice them. Things were getting bad here. They've probably gotten worse since then. And I hate to break it to you, they're just going to keep getting worse. Until Jesus comes back, our whole situation here probably ain't going to get a whole lot better. So things will continue to get crazier to you. That doesn't mean that we're supposed to go out there and fight everybody on. We're supposed to go out there and love everybody. If you feel like God's telling you, okay, you need to fight for me in this situation, do it, but do it in a loving manner. Don't go out there and bash people. Don't push them away. Don't make them hate God. Because that's what happens when we're representing him. When we are imitating God, we are taking that title. We've got to be very careful not to push those other people away. It's just our job to draw in. Why is it important? This is going to be one of the things. It's probably going to make me emotional. Dang it. September is hard on me. I'm trying. All right. I had a friend in my teenage years. We were gaming buddies. I know him as Veridity. I really honestly have a hard time remembering his real name because when you're in a gaming community, I don't know if anybody here is, but when you're in a gaming community, you go by what's called a gamer tag. It's a name that you make up. And everybody just referred to him as Veridity. We hated each other. We didn't like each other very much. You can have little mics and headsets and stuff that let you talk to the person. And we'd be in what's called a party chat, which means that if you're playing a game, just your group of friends, whoever in that party, can talk to each other. And I'll tell you, 3/4 of the time, me and him had each other muted because we hated each other so much. Like, we didn't get along. And then when we did, like, we're cool. I didn't mind it. But it never failed. We'd always get into a fight. And one of us threw the other one on mute. And we'd talk trash to our friends about him. He committed suicide. And I was a terrible representation of Christ. I don't think he was a Christian. That hurts. And his birthday, September 8th. And I'm reminded of it every year. I could have changed it maybe. I don't know. Because I didn't do it. So it hurts. hurts like crazy. In my small amount of being here, I've had about 17 people die in my life that died too early. I'm not talking about people that died of old age or anything like that. I'm talking about people that weren't above 50. And I've told myself I'm never going to do that again. Because those people have meaning. Back when I worked at Subway, a long time ago, I had a coworker, and we had a great night. We were finishing everything up, and she was the sweetest lady. She was a Christian, and she went home and got shot up by her husband. I was the last person to see her, and that hurt me a whole lot, messed me up for a while. But with that, thankfully, I was a better representation. And she was an amazing woman, very, very kind, very loving. You don't know how much time you got. You don't know how much time the people around you have. It is so important to be an imitator of Christ that actually does something that is meaningful. That's really the best way I can say it. Romans chapter 1, verse 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is God's power for salvation to everyone who believes. First to the Jew and also to the Greek. Everyone. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter your political stance. It doesn't matter whatever gender you identify as. Doesn't matter your race. It just doesn't matter. He loves you, and he wants you. Now maybe your beliefs don't line up with what his are, but he wants you. He wants that relationship, and it's so important that we as Christians show that. That we show people that we love them, that we care about them. I'm not going to go on and on. That's really it. I'm not going to go because my voice is shaking and I'm crying enough. I ended off there and pray. Father, I just want to thank you for this day. Again, thank you for everything that you've blessed us with. I pray over everybody here that as we walk out those doors, that we know that we are a representation of you, and that in everything that we do, that we're supposed to be showing the people around us that you love them. And I pray that we don't get mixed up. I pray that we don't take our own justice out there and try to make people realize they're wrong. I pray that we're just a good representation of you, and that your character becomes our character, that your love becomes our love. I pray you just give us life. I pray that when we walk out those doors, we walk out ready to show that love, Father. I thank you. I thank you for how much you love me. If anybody wants prayer, me and Lauren will be down in front. Just give you all